never thought the day I surprised my parents with a $425,000 Seaside mansion for their 50th anniversary would end with my mother looking me straight in the eye and saying words that shattered everything I thought I knew about my family. But before I get into that moment, the moment that flipped my entire world upside down, let me ask you this. If you gave someone the biggest gift of your life, something you worked years to achieve, and they repaid you with betrayal, disrespect, and a secret that shook your identity to the core, what would you do? Because I still don't know if what I did next makes me the villain or the only sane person in the room. Tell me if you would have done the same thing. The whole idea came to me a year before their anniversary. My parents had spent their entire lives working themselves to the bone. My dad was a mechanic for 40 years. Hands always scraped up, smelling like grease and metal. My mother worked part-time at a bakery, always smiling at customers but collapsing onto the couch the moment she came home. We never had much, but they gave me everything they could. Because of them, I got to chase opportunities they never could. I went to college, landed a high-paying remote job, and eventually built a tech consulting business that took off faster than I expected. The first time I made 6 figures, I cried. The first time I crossed $1 million, I bought them a new car. But the mansion, that was the dream gift. I had been saving for years without telling them. Growing up, we could never afford to take vacations to the beach. My mom always said the ocean was her happy place even though she rarely got to see it. She'd talk about the sound of waves the way someone else would talk about a childhood friend. My parents never went anywhere for their anniversaries. They couldn't afford to. So when I found the property, white-walled glass front, with a wraparound deck overlooking turquoise waves, it felt perfect. 3 bedrooms, 2 floors, tall windows that made the sunrise feel like it poured directly into the living room, a garden, a private path to the sand. It felt like the kind of place where someone could finally exhale after a lifetime of holding their breath. I spent months preparing. I furnished the entire place, set up a stocked kitchen, hired a landscaper to get the garden in shape. I decorated every corner with things that reminded me of them. Baking tools for my mom, vintage mechanic signs for my dad, framed family photos. I hired a photographer to capture the moment I revealed it. I told them I'd book them a short getaway for their anniversary, and they were excited, thinking it was maybe a little bed and breakfast. I drove them to the house myself. My dad made dad jokes the whole way. My mom sat in the back seat humming the same song she always hummed when she was nervous and excited at the same time. When we pulled up to the mansion, they stared out the window as if they were afraid to blink. My dad whispered, "This can't be right." My mom covered her mouth with both hands. I handed them the keys. "For you, happy anniversary." My mom burst into tears. My dad hugged me so tight I couldn't breathe. It felt like the best moment of my entire life. Like every sacrifice they made had gotten repaid in one glorious instant. I left them there that night so they could enjoy it in peace. But the next weekend, when I drove back to visit and bring them some extra things they forgot from home, everything started unraveling. When I arrived, the house looked different. Not physically, but atmospherically. The curtains were drawn even though the whole point was the beautiful view. The front door was locked from the inside. I knocked, expecting my mom to rush over excitedly again, but instead she opened the door only a crack. "Oh," she said. "It's you." Not angry, not happy, just neutral, weirdly neutral. That was the first moment I felt something was off. She stepped aside and let me in, but she didn't hug me. She didn't smile. My dad wasn't there. The living room felt tense, like I had walked in on the end of an argument. My mom stood stiffly, arms crossed, like she was bracing herself. I asked where Dad was, and she said he went for a walk. Her tone was clipped. Cold. I had never heard her talk like that, especially not to me. So I asked if everything was okay. She took a long breath, looked me up and down, and said, "We need to talk." 4 words that never mean anything good. Then she sat down and clasped, her hands together in her lap, like she was preparing for a confession. What she said next didn't make sense at first. It came out in pieces, like she was ripping off tiny bandages. She told me she and my father had been arguing ever since they moved in. "Not about the house," she said. "Not about money, but about me." That's when she said the sentence that made my stomach drop. "You shouldn't have bought this house." I laughed because I thought she meant it in a humble, "it's too much" way. But she didn't laugh. She repeated it, sharper this time. "You shouldn't have bought this house. We don't want it." My first reaction was disbelief. I asked if they were overwhelmed, if they felt guilty, if they were just adjusting. But she shook her head. She said it wasn't about the house itself. It was about me, trying to control their lives. She said I was using money to buy gratitude. She said the gift made them feel obligated. I kept trying to figure out where this was coming from because none of it sounded like her. Then things got worse. She said my father told her something after they moved in, something he had kept hidden for decades, and that the house made it impossible to avoid the truth anymore. I asked what truth. She hesitated. Then she said it. I'm not your biological mother. I swear the world went silent. All I could hear was my heartbeat. I felt like the ground had tilted. She said she and my father tried to keep the secret forever because they didn't want me to feel unwanted. She said my biological mother was a relative. She wouldn't say who, but that she died shortly after giving birth. My dad agreed to raise me as their own, and my mom stepped in because she loved my father and, eventually, she loved me too. But the house, she said, created a divide. She said my father felt guilty accepting such a huge gift from a child who wasn't biologically his. She said she felt guilty accepting it because she felt like she had lied to me my entire life. I didn't know whether to scream or cry. I asked why they chose this moment, to tell me. She said my father had been insisting for years they tell me, but she refused because she was scared I would walk away from them. But the house, she said, made her feel like she no longer deserved to be my mother. Then she said the thing that broke something inside me. It isn't right for you to buy something like this for people who aren't really your parents. I froze. I stared at her, waiting for her to take it back. She didn't. I asked her if she actually believed that after raising me my whole life. She didn't answer. She just looked down at her hands and said, "It's better if you take the house back. We'll go home. It's too much. It's wrong. Please don't make this harder." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Everything I ever did, every accomplishment, every moment I tried to give back to them, it suddenly felt twisted. They didn't want the house. They didn't want the gift. They didn't even want me to call them my parents anymore. I asked her what Dad thought, and she said he agreed. She said they talked about it for days. She said they were going to tell me together, but he couldn't handle it, so he left the house before I arrived. I left without saying another word. The drive home was a blur. I kept trying to convince myself this wasn't real. I kept hearing her voice saying, "People who aren't really your parents." It played on loop like a broken record. I didn't sleep. I didn't eat. I felt like I had lost my entire identity in one conversation. A few days later, my dad called me, not to apologize, not to comfort me, but to ask if I could transfer the house back into my name so they could move on without guilt. He said they would return to our old home. He said it was better for everyone. That's when something inside me snapped. And now I want you to pause for a moment and tell me what you would have done in my place. If the people you worshipped, the people you worked your whole life to repay, suddenly told you that you didn't belong to them, and that your biggest gift to them was inappropriate because you weren't really their child, would you have forgiven them? Would you have begged them to accept you again? Or would you have done what I did next? Because here's what I did. I told him no. I told him the house was theirs if they wanted it. But I wasn't going to be the one to take it away from them. If they felt guilty, that was their burden to carry, not mine. I told him I needed space. I told him I needed time to figure out who I was without the lies. And for the first time in my life, I hung up on him. The next day, I transferred all the utility bills into their names. I removed myself from the maintenance contract. I called the landscaper and discontinued my payments. I took my name off everything. If they wanted the house, it was fully theirs now. If they didn't want it, they could sell it. But it was no longer my responsibility. A week passed. Then my mother called. She didn't cry. She didn't apologize. She said, "We can't keep the house. We sold it." She said they were moving back home and wanted distance. I felt like she was cutting an umbilical cord I never even knew existed until it was already severed. I tried to process it, but I felt numb. Then the worst blow came. They didn't just sell the house. They sold it for the same price. I bought it for without telling me, so they could return the money to me. They mailed me a check for the entire amount. No note, no explanation, just the money. It felt like they were refunding me like I was a stranger who made an accidental purchase. I didn't cash it. I didn't deposit it. I burned it. I know some people will say that was stupid, but it wasn't about the money anymore. It was about refusing to let them erase 20-something. Years of parenthood with a single check. It was about refusing to let them rewrite our story into something transactional and shallow. Months have passed now. I'm in therapy. I'm trying to unravel all the threads of identity. They knotted inside me for decades. I'm trying to figure out who my biological mother was. My father refuses to talk about it. My mother blocked my number after I told her I couldn't pretend nothing happened. And the truth is, I miss them. I miss the people I thought they were. I miss the childhood I thought I had. I miss the version of my mom who laughed at everything and hugged me for no reason. But that woman was probably a character in a story I never truly understood. Now I'm rebuilding from scratch, and I still don't know if what I did, the refusal, the distance, the anger, was right or wrong. So tell me, was I wrong for walking away from them? Was I wrong for refusing to accept their rejection quietly? Was burning the check too dramatic? Or was I finally standing up for myself after a lifetime of believing a lie? If you are on my side, like this video, subscribe for more stories like this. And please, share your thoughts in the comments. I really want to hear what you all think. I'll see you in the next story.